Hello, and welcome to the Total Drama Action tier list, or my Total Drama Action tier list. I'm assuming if you're here, you've seen my comprehensive roast of Total Drama Action, which by the time this is uploaded should have just come out. This is kind of a follow-up video to it. If you're familiar with my Island video, this is basically the same thing. At the end of the Island video, I kind of did a tier list based on my personal opinion of how the characters were portrayed in the season, what I liked, what I disliked, etc. And let me just actually fix the ranking here to like the system I'm using. So yeah, this is basically just me talking about the Total Drama Action characters, a little bit more detail than I did in my main video. I'm going to be ranking the contestants. This specific tier list also has Chris and Chef, I think, somewhere. Yeah, right here. But I'm actually not going to be talking about them. They're just kind of there because this is just the one that I used online. And yeah, so this is unscripted. You can't tell by my stutters. And it's not going to be very heavily edited, unlike the video. This is just a little fun bonus for anyone who's interested. And yeah, so we're going to be going from S to F tier. If you want to know what each tier means in a little bit more detail, I would recommend watching my first tier list video. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. So honestly, I'll spoil you now. The range of tiers is going to be a little bit lower than the Islands tier list, because I think honestly, because of this season's smaller cast, each character got a little bit more attention, and there's no real dead space characters, so that'll definitely affect how I rate these guys. But yeah, so let's start with Beth. At first I wanted to put Beth in A tier, but honestly, I don't know if she's like really like that super special. So I thought she probably fits well in B tier, B for Beth, haha. I do like how they definitely made her more engaged in action, and she was a finalist, but she's actually probably one of the least popular finalists in a lot of circles I'm in. And I think she's better than a lot of people give her credit for, but she's not perfect. She's she's often repeated jokes. She doesn't even take up that much space, to be honest. Like, there's not a lot of focus on her, really. She kind of just like doesn't get eliminated until like the season's over. So she just kind of becomes a finalist, but like it's really interesting that they made her a finalist, given how she was sort of a main character in Island, but she got kicked out pretty early on. And I like that for her. I mean, I'm glad that she kind of like was given a much more engaged role this season, but with that being said, I don't know if she really like stopped stopped the show, or like I don't know if that's a term. I don't know if she really defined the show or really made that much of an impact. So yeah, still good though. Let's go with Bridget next. Bridget, I'd say she's also a B. I mean, she got kicked out pretty early in the competition, but she and Jeff eventually became the Aftermath hosts. And I think Bridget, along with Jeff, ended up really filling in a lot of extra space because of that. And I think it gave them something unique that a lot of the other Total Drama couples didn't have. Bridget and Jeff really often did play like secondary. They were never really as important or defining to Total Drama Island as like Duncan and Courtney were, and Gwen and Trent were. I think because of that, there's not a lot of people who say those two are their favorite couple. So yeah, she's still good though. It's not like I dislike her, but still pretty great actually. B tier is great, but I don't know if she's really like a star of the show, but still pretty fun. Courtney is a very divisive character in action, I think, because she takes a big turn from how she was in Island. In Island, she was feisty, but she was always kind of like more bark than she was bite. And I think action kind of turned her into like, kind of took her personality in a way to its kind of logical conclusion. She became much more like daring, much more, violence, the right word. She was hostile. She was aggressive. She really went for the million. And I think a lot of people dislike that because there's some times where she's just like kind of ridiculous. It's even like in the mystery episode where she's like whining to Chris like a child. It's kind of ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I still love Courtney, even in this form where she's not as like sweet, but kind of like high maintenance high strung as she is in the first season, I still think she's like just endlessly entertaining here. If for at least somewhat different reasons. So I can understand people who say they loved Courtney in the first season but did not like her in the second season, because it was definitely a shift for her. But with that being said, I still think, she's worth. She's an 8 for me. I still love Courtney in this season. She's still fun. She's still funny. I mean, there's still like great, hilarious moments between her and Duncan. So that's my goal. DJ actually took a more prominent role this season, I think, even though he didn't stay as long, just because he had the whole mama thing, he had the whole Chef Alliance thing, and he ended up taking being more important. I think he had a more defined kind of arc in this season that he didn't have in the first season. The first season, he was kind of there, but he was never like a very mainstay, like propped up character. That's a big difference between Island and Action in general. I feel like Action, like every character like had an arc in Action. In Island, there were some characters who definitely like took up more space and time with the narrative than others. So I'm gonna put DJ in B tier. It's actually the same as he was in last tier, but last video. But he was definitely they gave him a good arc this season. When he takes himself off the show, it's interesting. Duncan's an A tier. I mean, he's pretty much just as fun in season 2 as he is in season 1. I guess the one thing he doesn't have is that I do like the kind of like nasty kind of rivalry he and Courtney had in the first season that eventually became their relationship, how they kind of worked off of each other's differences. This season, I think it's a little bit more simplified. It's more just like, kind of a rivalry. Courtney beats Duncan. But like, there's not as much kind of like Courtney trying to change Duncan, but Duncan doesn't want to change. It's not as cute, I suppose. I don't know, that's creepy to say, but I still think Duncan's hilarious. I think he's an awesome character. He really is definitely one of the staff's favorite characters too, and I'm glad he became a finalist. Yeah. I guess the only thing that I kind of dislike about this season, or one of the things, is just kind of how we never really got to enjoy Duncan and Courtney as a couple together. And that always kind of sucks, especially for me, because they're obviously my favorite ship. But yeah. So then there's Jeff. Jeff is an interesting character because, especially like in the first season, he was a great character. He was lovable. Everyone, he was sweeter than honey, as Lashana says. But like this season, he kind of becomes a dick, and it's an interesting change for him. But the reason I'm still putting him in B tier is that, it's definitely a noticeable shift, and it's hard to have to not feel like it's a bit shoehorned in. But honestly, his whole thing is the aftermath, taking all the glitz and glamour too seriously. At first, I said it was not that believable. He was acting out of character. But the more I thought about it, I think it's a reasonable change for him, in my opinion. When he kind of lets all the kind of fun and the excess get to him, that he starts kind of forgetting about his friends. I think that's a reasonable arc for him. I actually talked about this more in the video because it's an interesting shift, especially when he goes back to the Redonkulous race, and he's probably sweeter in that season than he was in the first season. So I think they definitely juggled him around a little bit throughout the show, but I think he actually still holds up pretty well in this season. He's not cringeworthy or just frustrating. He's likable, so good for Jeff. I like Jeff. Gwen. She's a C tier character. She was an A tier character in the first season. She's one of the best characters in the first season, but this time around, she doesn't stay that long, and her entire fucking arc is centered around Trent, really. That's all it's about. It's about she doesn't like Trent that much anymore because he's not that likable anymore, and it's frustrating to see, especially as a fan of the first season, just kind of seeing how quickly Gwen and Trent were thrown away as an item. I know, couples, they fight now and then, but I don't know, just the shift from the end of season 1 to the beginning of season 2 is too much. It's too fast, and it really just leaves you kind of unsatisfied. And I don't know, the whole Gwen and Trent thing, I rant about it a lot in the video. I don't need to rant about it much more. Though, to be fair, Gwen is less unlikable than Trent in this season. And I guess that's really just because she's not the one who really is acting all different. it's just because of the whole conflict between her and Gwen. I mean, her and Trent, that it's not very entertaining to watch. It's just kind of frustrating and uncomfortable. Get a swig of water. And I guess now I should just put Trent where he belongs. Yeah, I almost put him in F tier. Because I really dislike how Trent was written this season. But I ended up deciding to put him in D tier. And the reason is because when you compare Action to a lot of other seasons, especially Pakuto Island, which is not exactly a very great season, I kind of thought to myself, do I really get bothered enough by Trent in the same way I get bothered by characters in Pakuto Island? Because Pakuto Island, like, when I watch it, it almost hurts. I'm just like, I can't take it seriously. It's cringeworthy. It's frustrating. Trent is bad in this season, but I don't just, like, want to fucking turn it off. It doesn't make me as just bothered as, like, some of the characters do in Pakuto Island. So I'm being generous. I'm giving Trent a D tier. But it's no question that Trent in this season has been derailed to shit. Like, it's ridiculous. The whole number 9 thing, how it just came out of nowhere. It's ridiculous. And, you know, I'll never get over it. Harold is one of the characters that I think is definitively, like, without a doubt, better in Action than he was in Island. And he was great in Island, but he is an A tier character in Action. Like, every episode has Harold say at least one thing that's totally hilarious. Like, there were so many clips that I wanted to put in the Action video that were just confessionals of him. He has great confessionals that I wanted to put in the video, but I ended up taking out just for the sake of time. But yeah, I mean, if you decide not to watch Action because if you watched my video, I recommend watching Action because there are a lot of hilarious lines, especially said by Harold in this season, that I think are really worth watching the season for. Harold's hilarious. I like his I like how the season puts more emphasis on his relationship, or not his kind of like, not really even rivalry. They just don't like each other. His thing with Duncan, the kind of bullying thing, but occasionally they do kind of work together in like the war episode and the samurai kung fu Asian culture episode. Yeah, so he's really great this season. Heather, I had trouble picking Heather because Heather is, I wanted to put her in A tier because Heather's like really fun. She's entertaining. I like how catty she is, but you know, I decided that she's a B tier character. Definitely on the line between A tier and B tier in this season, but I don't know. I mean, she definitely is not nearly as just awesome as she is in season 1 and spoiler alert, season 3. But still great. Heather's lovable. I do actually like in this season how she kind of is trying to maintain a friendship or trying to create friendships and like try and find a place in the game, even though that essentially everyone hates her now. And it creates an interesting dynamic she has, especially with Harold. I didn't really bring it up in the video, but her kind of like back and forth with Harold in the Island to Action special is really interesting. And yeah, Izzy is A tier. I mean, not like she's a very emotionally compelling character. It's not like she has a huge arc in this season. She's actually not even in that long, but she is just fucking hilarious. I can't not get enough with her, not enough of her. Like, you know, Izzy is just, you know, I feel like Izzy is the only crazy character that Total Drama has done right. And I mean crazy, not in like in the sense that they're just fucking like out of their minds. There's like Revenge of the Island and Pakuto had people convinced they were fucking wizards and shit. And it's almost never gone over well, except for Izzy. Izzy is just such a great character that I feel like the writers have been trying to recreate her over and over again, and they've never been able to match up with how just lovable and out of pocket she is. She's fucking great. Justin, I was considered, you know, I'm torn between B and C for him. Like, I really do like how they kind of gave him a bigger role in this season, but and I do admire how he became a character with like a personality and stuff. But is he really like that much more engaging in this season? Like, is he really like a super interesting character now? He's good, and C is good. But at least in theory it's good. But like, is he really like as great as Beth, Bridget, Heather. I don't know. I mean, if he is somewhere, he's definitely somewhere between B and C. Because, like his whole arc is just kind of, it's, he gets hurt. His whole charming, good looks kind of wears off. That's actually a complaint I have, is that sometimes he seemed to be attractive to Beth, sometimes not so much. Like there was a point like in the middle to the end of the season where like Beth and Lindsay just like lost all attraction to him, but later on, like in the aftermath, she like is attracted to him again. It's kind of weird, kind of inconsistent. But I don't know. It's like he wants to keep his modeling contract. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I think I'm gonna keep him in C. He's enjoyable, but honestly, in the long term, I don't know if he really like defines the season. He's better than Gwen though. I think a lot better than Gwen. So he would almost be in B, but I don't know. I don't think he really is just ruling the show. And it's nice. I mean, I admire Action for putting Justin into the season. I mean, everyone else in this season basically had a role in season 1. He's the only character who was brought into this season like as almost a new character, but still. Lashana. A lot of people don't like Lashana in Action, and I do talk about that, but I think she's overall pretty good. I'll put her either C or B. Fuck, now I'm not sure. I'm gonna put her in B, because I think, and this is one thing that I think they did well, because she lied about going to the spa, which I mean honestly was never really that well like portrayed as bad. I mean especially because in that episode she like solved the whole thing on her own, but then she's portrayed as like bad for like fake crying or whatever to get the spa day. It's hard to take seriously. The whole talking shit thing was a better thing to portray her as having conflict with the others, and even then, that's a believable thing for her to do. She's she's with an old friend. She's just like, oh man, all these fucking people at Action, they're So it's as I said, there are mistakes, but they're reasonable mistakes for her to make, in my opinion. So, and I think that the third Aftermath episode where she goes in the lie detector really kind of rounds that out as a whole, because it really does kind of show that she's not perfect. She can often let certain situations get to her. She has a little bit too much fun, kind of like saying mean shit about her friends, and she feels bad for it. She doesn't resent Harold for voting for her. I think Lashana's like arc in this season, some people dislike parts of it, and I'm not actually that different. But I think overall, she's her ending leaves you satisfied. I mean, it's kind of like revealed she does have a thing for Harold. It's not just like her just like leading him on or whatever. She feels bad for what she did. And I forgot to mention this with Heather. I really like how Lashana and Heather become friends, especially because they're both in this disgraced position. Heather kind of sticks up for her and says, she didn't do anything that bad. And they kind of have this kind of friendship together. It's not like super like they're not over everything, but they've kind of like come to understand each other a bit better. I feel like they kind of throw that away in World Tour though, which is kind of a shame. Still though, Lashana's pretty good in this season, pretty great. So B tier. Though I almost put her in C tier just because like her arc, it can be a little bit weird, and I don't even know if it's like that enjoyable, like A tier enjoyable, whatever. Lindsay, I almost did not put her in A tier, but I think Lindsay is one of the characters that in Action it really was a continuation from her arc in Island, because Lindsay in this season, she tries to become a leader. She tries to take a bigger role as being a leader to others and in her team. And she's not always very good at it, but like after her just being like a dumb pawn in the first season, it's really fun seeing her try and change herself. And she's probably pretty funny in this season. I didn't actually go into that much detail about it in the video, but I really do like how like the highest placing contestants in Action, at least for the most part, are all a lot of like the nerdy, more like characters who are more like intertwined with pop culture. Like Harold, he's obviously a movie nerd and he goes pretty far. Lindsay, she likes, like the celebrity lifestyle. She goes pretty far. Like I like how Lindsay's strengths, especially in the rock and roll episode, how she just does a great job like with the paparazzi challenge. I really like how she like kind of fits into the season. She fits into it pretty well. So yeah, I think Lindsay's really fantastic in Action. And I guess my only complaint, and it's not even that much of a complaint. I think I should like, I should probably, I'm not actually technically done with the action video. I'm almost done with it. I want to go back into it and kind of make a few notes about Lindsay as a character, because although like her voting for herself was kind of stupid, like her whole thing at the end of the day where she's like, well, you know, I think friends are more important than the million. That was sweet. She kind of went off on a good note. Well, she kind of like, her elimination was a little bit silly, but then they kind of made her leaving the game pretty well done. It wasn't like they thought about it, I think. So, sorry about my stuttering. I'm not going to edit this out too much. And last but not least, Owen. A. I think Owen's A. Some people don't like Owen as much in this season, but I think he's pretty much just as great as he was in Island. I like what he did with Chris. His whole, you know, being hired to bother his friends and get on their nerves. I think that was an interesting arc for him. And it was never like that mean-spirited. It was just kind of playful. There's a lot of fun slapstick. And I think in general, you know, I like his dynamic with Chris. And I gotta say the same thing about Lindsay too. Because Lindsay and Owen seem to be essentially the only contestants that Chris cares about in any like meaningful capacity. Like he seems to have like a bit of like a buddy thing with Owen, especially when he hires Owen, and you know he just seems to like enjoy Owen, the crazy shit Owen does. And Lindsay, like it's kind of a fact in the show that Lindsay is Chris's personal favorite contestant, and you kind of see him like treat her a little bit special. And I don't know, I've always liked how Chris interacts with the two. And you know, I don't know, I think Owen, the jaw thing was an interesting thing for him to take, but I think that ended up giving him a lot of funny moments. I think when he was in the fucking wheelchair on the pain meds, that was funny. Yeah, I mean, Owen, I think is just an easy character for the guys to write, and that's why they kind of like kept him in. Yeah, so I like Owen. All right, so this is the whole tier list. As you can see, there's no S tier characters. I don't think any character in this season really gets to the point of Courtney and Heather in the first season, but to be fair, there are more A tier characters. Like I think that overall action, like the great characters aren't as great, but there are more of them. Like the 6 characters here are fantastic throughout the whole season. And the B tier characters are great too. I like Justin's pretty good, just you know, kind of all right. But I do admire how he, you know, was given a role like unlike most other like kind of like early dropouts in the first season, he was kind of given new life in this season, which I really appreciate. And Gwen and Trent are really like the ones staying on Action as a whole. But otherwise, you know, Action's a great season, great cast, and yeah. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for also watching the Action video, or if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend it. It's 2 hours, but it's pretty fun. I enjoyed making it a lot, and a lot of people wanted it. So yeah, I'll see you guys around.